This final panel session, we gave the title of Be Connected. And I suppose it's just really in summary of everything that you've heard today and how we bring it all back together about what we're actually talking about. I thought I would put you a little bit on the spot, Funbi and Joanna, given that Emma has just spent 20 minutes talking a lot about a whole lot of things. Have you got a question or a reflection for Emma on what you've heard? And if you have, please do put it to her now. I feel like that's really mean.
No, it's absolutely fine. I mean, I was so excited by all you were presenting. I know we had a conversation in the morning. And, you know, when the slide came up that you're already active in West Africa, I got super excited because I've got loads of questions on, you know, earlier I presented that I'm going back home and looking into that project, but one of the things in that area, there's a lot of infrastructure issues, and I think in West Africa there is that mentality, and is how do we connect people like you who are doing brilliant things with the communities that actually need it the most, because, you know, the West is already being built, but most of the global South is still going to have a lot of development, and is how we make that development and steer it in the right manner. So it's not really a question or response, it's just, you know, you've already got that, let's get talking later. I have so many things I want to discuss with you.
To be honest, actually, some of these communities will be amazing for what we do. One of the problems we have with doing sort of district heating and localised networks is regulation in the UK, put in there for our safety, but when you actually start from nothing, it's a surprise what you can actually go achieve. So I'm sure we'd be really happy to talk to you.
Sure.
Thank you. Well, just wow. Thank you. What an amazing set of stories. But I'll think of a question relating to this, but one of my reflections listening to what you were sharing with us, Emma, and also reflecting some of the questions and the reflections from the morning, is this how do we get outside our tribe and influence those who perhaps aren't so interested in collaborating, or perhaps have shareholder primacy more front of mind, and so on. And I think, you know, it's a universal truth that humans tend to be motivated by success. And success means many different things to any of us. But what you just shared so many examples of success: tangible, experiential, benefits-based success. And so I suppose my question is, how is Octopus using those successes to, is Octopus using that basket of successes to influence change across the rest of the sector and beyond, and how?
Ooh, okay. So not everything is a success.
No, of course
we spend a lot of time in R&D. It's a fail fast or roll it out. The solar sharing, which I briefly touched on, I'd been working on for a couple of months, and then all of a sudden it was launched on LinkedIn, and we're like, oh, it's launched. So sometimes you don't even know that stuff's happening. Just somebody thought, oh, that sounds great, let's launch it. And then it sort of then makes it happen, if that makes sense. But I think most of the motivation, definitely my motivation and with Octopus, is being pissed off with something. You know what I mean? We think we can do it better, let's give it a go. But I don't think we ever expect to be successful. We just think, you know what, let's just try.
Just try it.
Yeah.
The definition of being bold and brave, you might say.
Do something, do anything.
Yeah. Funbi, you look like you had a...
No, I mean, I'm just still...
Oh, can we turn this one on? Sorry, I had to grab that one. Thank you.
Again, I think everyone in this room and this opportunity to share, this is how we create that change. You know, I wouldn't have naturally known about any of the work that's been done here. And it's just kind of a testament to why it's important to come to these kind of events. And then with what's happened today, maybe the audience can go out and do similar things. In my slides, I mentioned that there's that active conversation. We're literally doing and being the example right now. So yeah, I just reflecting on that. And when you all have the break and go out for lunch, maybe it's a good thing to just try and network, try and speak to people, and just someone you don't know, grab them, be brave and grab a stranger and find out what they're about, because it's these random things. You started the work with your community that then attracts the attention, and if you're not doing it, nobody's going to know about it. And do something, speak about it in your own formal way, but just know that by doing something, you are already making change happen. Yeah.
I think we'll maybe jump into some questions from all of you, so you can keep them coming. We've got some already. And I particularly am straight into this one. See earlier notes about being completely obsessed with retrofit, but new builds are shiny and exciting. How can we focus on less glamorous and very challenging retrofit projects? And I have to say, I know Emma through our work in retrofit, so being in the retrofit team in Best, being co-director of the National Retrofit Hub. Emma's involved with RICS, so I think I know that that's in our kind of happy place. But maybe if anybody would like to reflect a little bit on like that retrofit challenge. I mean, Emma, you were saying about going in zero bills on retrofit houses, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got some really exciting projects. We've been working with the Housing Association on a 1960s retrofit. Due to start in a couple of weeks' time, we think that will be zero bills. We're offering 5-year zero bills in brand new homes because we've got NHBC to fall back on. In retrofit, we're offering it for 5 years because actually, if we're honest, we don't know whether the people have put in egg cartons or whether they've actually done what they said on the tin. So we're offering 5 years for retrofit just to see how it goes. But we think we can get there. We've got a terrace house example, mid-terrace, deep dive retrofit, internal wall insulation. We think we can get that to zero bills. The issue is that we're still keeping it very much in the sandbox because as soon as we say we can do it, 26% of all the UK housing stock would be deemed to be a terrace house. And I cannot have whatever that is, number of houses phoning me up because I will get into so much trouble because the phone lines will go horribly wrong. And so we're not ready yet, but we are doing things as quickly as we can in a controlled manner.
I think this is really important when it comes to retrofit, right? Because we have got to be so much more careful when it comes to the idea of trying and failing quickly. Because you were talking about an industry or a practice, we've talked about whether retrofit is an industry or is it a practice. And I think if it's the practice, it's already suffered a whole load of bumps and bruises. It's already, you know, it's got good news stories, but it's got some pretty shocking news stories. And then it's got all the well-established boundaries that if you're here tomorrow, we're going to really have a great day. We'll talk about retrofit. But you have got to be careful, you know, about like as soon as you've got a solution, it's got to have been tried and tested. It's got to have been protected. And we have to make sure, I mean, this is why your work with the RICS is important because we're talking about quality assurance and standards and things like that in retrofit. So it's definitely important.
My biggest fear is the money. The banks now have got to reduce the carbon footprint of their loan book. And therefore, we're currently in the period of carrot, I would say. You know, grants, loans, help. I think if we're going to be at the stick point within the next 2 years. I now understand insurance companies and some mortgage companies. NatWest pulled out of insuring homes in floodplains.
I mean, if we're talking about carrots, though, we've got, you know, we've got baby carrots at the moment, haven't we, as well? And then we're having to move into like pretty big sticks. So that's not even balanced, is it?
No.
Yeah.
I think we need to get into some of these questions that the audience are asking because we've got our 3 panelists here, so please make sure you're asking questions to all of them. I know Emma has just spoken, so naturally people want to ask you some more questions. I'm keen to understand the top question here. Why is Scotland behind England in energy models? Can you shed any light on that, Emma? We have all these natural resources. It just seems like a no-brainer. And Scotland historically has been ahead of the game, ahead of the curve. Our legislation is getting us towards net zero quicker than the rest of the country.
I think you're going to leap ahead.
Do you think there's going to be a bit of a leapfrog?
Yeah. I also think when you've got zonal pricing on energy, Scotland will have some of the cheapest power in the country, and therefore businesses will be actively moving where power is cheaper. And I think with the ban on gas boilers, that, you know, might not have seen it this year, but I think next year and for the years after, you will be streets ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the ban for a new build, I'm slightly rusty on it, but I think it's 2026. So, and most of the volume house builders are already putting in air source and solar. I think the missing bit is the battery storage, and you get that in, it then becomes much more efficient. It's interesting, I just want to ask a question that's not on there, but I'm, again, using my privileges. You talk quite a lot about the batteries in electric cars, but we're seeing a lot in the media about sales of electric cars going down, people kind of handing them back, they're not happy with them. What are you at Octopus doing to try and encourage more use of them?
So a lot of people are getting their electric vehicles through company leasing programs. We offer one as an example, but others are available. And genuinely, even my husband, who got annoyed with the car when it first arrived because he couldn't open the door, Tesla, didn't like it. My 13-year-old son loves it. My husband hates it. But actually, now when you see the cost of actually running it and the charges coming forward, it is making life a lot easier. It's cheaper to run. It's better for the environment. You can drive through ULEZ and not worry. You know, I just think we're in a difficult hump of just getting over it. And I think there's just a lot of angry people out there in the world. And therefore, there's just a lot of angry articles.
Yeah.
Actually, can I ask a quick, I'm not a technical retrofit person, obviously, but actually on the electric vehicle thing, really interesting because obviously the idea of having that as a battery makes a huge amount of sense. As a non-driver, as in I've never bothered learning to drive, and also as a placemaker, and also thinking about, you know, as well as the climate benefits, the other benefits and necessities of active travel, I get a little bit itchy when EVs are positioned as the answer. And working with the South Down National Park, which is the planning authority that I've spent too much time with recently, I was actually told at the beginning of the conversation we don't need to worry about climate change because we're going to have electric vehicles. We're super interested to know, yeah, I know, led by giants, what is Octopus doing anything to look at other forms of mobility as part of this kind of transition and thinking about how we use mobility as a tool to kind of be empowering this energy mix?
Probably not enough. I mean, we're 8 years old, and at the end of the day, we're an energy company.
Yeah, what have you been doing for the last 8 years, really?
However, I am going on a trial of an electric train just before Christmas. I'm a total geek. I'm a bit of a transport geek, so I'm looking forward to that. So it's a really difficult one. We can't solve every problem. And also it has massive urban design issues. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because having been a developer myself, we've been encouraged to put cars miles away, you know, rather than near your house, right? But that has huge social issues, especially if you're a taxi driver or a white van man. You know, everybody said to me, housing associations don't need car chargers. Well, those people need car chargers more than ever. And actually, they need the cheapest price more than ever. And therefore, why should they be paying 78 pence to be charging on a street per unit versus 7p overnight in their home? It just doesn't seem fair.
One of the things, sorry to interrupt, there's too much to talk about here, but one of the things that we're planning for the Phoenix is actually to create a mobility hub so that you move away from the desire or need for every home to have its own parking space to a central, if you like, mobility service where, yeah, if you need your blue badge or you need a white van, you have your dedicated parking space, but otherwise you have access to a mobility pool. And I'm just thinking aloud, you know, that's almost like a massive multi-purpose battery, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
Just to come in on the point and the question that was raised here is, I think we need to always look, and this has been mentioned in many people's the speakers' talks, is that we need to think in a multifaceted way. So Octopus is working within their sphere of influence. People who are active designers or collaborators in the built environment, this is the bit that, okay, we've got the people providing services, but how are we actually creating that urban fabric that works for everybody? And we're not going to tackle the issue of climate change and all of the problems that we have in society by using the same models. And I think in general, we all have to get comfortable that we're not going to be able to do what we used to be able to do. We're going to have to make some personal changes and sacrifices in how we actually move as a society. Obviously grounding that in things that there are people who have specific needs, so make sure that they're considered, because you know you can sometimes rush too far in one direction and leave people behind, and the only way of actually getting to a point of sustainability is to actually consider everybody and everything holistically. So people like Octopus supporting them, and people trying to do good things, bringing them into that conversation really is what I would say is the solution for that. but you won't get everything right.
No.
It's a trial and error, and we also have to adapt what our targets and goals will need to be.
Is that outcomes focus again? So it's natural that Emma's just like spoken about lots of things that everyone's like, so yeah, and then this bit, and I have this question, and what are you doing about the next bit and the next bit? And just to remember that, hang on a minute, there's like, what responsibility sits within whose remit? Where can you have that impact? Thinking about what Bola was saying about that T-shaped professional, where you're good, do what you're doing really well, stay connected. The panel, I didn't mean to say that, but like be connected with, okay, I see where we're at the limits of the success of the bits that we're doing, and we need to collaborate with you, and we're focusing on these outcomes, and we're running a full steam ahead, trying to get to this sort of solution, and then you realize, hang on a minute, who have we left behind in this process? And you can only do that by staying connected into your ecosystem of other people that you can talk to. And I think that, for no other reason, to collaborate, it is to make sure that you understand where you're sitting in that kind of ecosystem of being able to move things forward, and to sometimes realize that, hang on a minute, this bit that we've been pushing forward, actually we need to park that. That's not, no pun intended. We need to like think about moving forward. I think one thing I would really like us to come back on, it's kind of connected to what you were saying around the concern around electric vehicles as maybe this sort of like, oh, are we just replacing the petrol-powered car with an electricity-powered car, and aren't there other situations to be considered? It is really that question of embodied carbon. It's really that question of like ultimate total carbon budgets, and I'm reminded of what Indy Johar was talking about last year about how actually sort of the electric bike is going to be something that allows a huge like improvement in mobility, but also low levels of embodied carbon needed. And there's all sorts of things you can do to retrofit your bikes to have that. So I don't know if you'd like to reflect a little bit on that. It's one thing for us to talk about what we're trying to achieve as a nation who already rely on too many externalities. We're already relying on importing raw materials and raw, like precious metals and things, which are having an impact globally, socially. So how are we thinking about those things? Or do you just even want to reflect? I'm not expecting that you each have got answers to those things, but I think considering the global impact of our action is something we're going to have to do simultaneously.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's again goes back to this idea of how we design and how we adapt and change. The climate is changing whether we like it or not. So why wouldn't we as parts organisms in that environment have to change? So we can start small. I would always say, again, like with the example that Emma gave, is start small with what you can do in your local environment, speak to people, educate them, as Bola mentioned, and try and change the habits that you have and the habits of your communities. That is actually one of a key thing that in terms of reducing the demand, with electric and battery power, there's all sorts of other social issues. So there's no silver bullet to how we get to a net zero from a carbon perspective, also a net zero from social perspective, because what might be doing good here might be causing serious harm in another community, and then we have all sorts of global issues of, creating a crisis here to solve a problem there. And it's trying to, again, get everyone into that mindset of what can I do with the two hands that I've got, and locally, and then collaborating for like a bigger vision, again, focusing on what is the purpose, what are you actually trying to do? And just going back to the point that, and the question that was raised really, really early on is like, are you a leader or a worker? Neither is better. Everything you do contributes and has a value.
Great. Everything she said, plus. I think, ultimately this, manifold complexity, of course, and lots of interconnections, unforeseen consequences, and I think we just have to acknowledge that and own it. And looking for any simple silver bullet solution is going to be a fool's game. I think that also being mindful that the reality is that whenever one steps forward to talk about the need and the opportunity to do things differently, coming back to the idea of bravery, that there will be an expectation that you will therefore then fix and solve everything. So coming back to the, understanding where and how you can make that deep difference, and where and how actually the role is about shining a light on the nature and scale of the challenge for others to take the mantle. I think there's also that, the simplicity of, well, actually, this is a question of how shall we live? Whether, and on the mobility point, it's like of course there is a human need to move. So, where do we need to move to or from? Why? And then how? Yeah. If we're in the lucky situation of being able to be involved in designing a new place or a new part of a place, then, that brief is absolutely essential. Do you need to move first, and why? And then how? So I think that, someone in the break asked me whether do you have a supply chain perspective as well? And I was like, yeah, looking at the whole value chain, of course, but those zones of influence, always remembering on the key question is, what's the outcome we're trying to achieve? And, using that as your brief before we will need to get tangled up in difficult, complicated questions of technical solutions and supply chain and so on, but really always drawing it back to the essence of which aspect of how we live are we trying to address this, and then what's the smartest way of doing it.
I mean, and the great news as well is that there are tools to help us do this. There's so much, and again, to reflect on what you're saying about the importance of coming to these things is so we can share that knowledge and make those tools available, and particularly when we're talking about the local versus the global, the social, the economic, all of that. The Donut Economics Action Lab, there is so many tools there that allow you to sort of have a way of, because it might seem a lot, right? That look, I'm trying to do a good thing right here. Stop telling me to look at the whole global picture. I don't have time for that. You don't have to worry about where to start with that because tools like that already exist, which is really, really important. Being part of a community, collaborating, sharing those tools so that you have that access, that's super important as well. I'm conscious that there are a lot of questions on the Slido specifically for Emma, and I'm inclined to say, Emma, you're going to be here all day, aren't you? If you have those technical ones, maybe there's an opportunity to get into some of those.
Well, I wonder if you want to just pick off a couple and then we can refresh the screen and see some other questions as well. Yeah. There's a couple of fairly easy, straightforward ones. I think they're about, did any of the houses need fabric upgrades?
No.
Yes, no. Excellent.
Answered.
What's the cost compared to gas for for your village? I guess because you've got oil, you don't...
Still a little bit more expensive than gas, that's the problem, but we do have a solution with data centres and other technologies coming together, so we're rolling that out.
Okay. And then I think the octopus question about high-density areas and cities, I'm very conscious that within Glasgow and Edinburgh, we've got huge numbers of tenement flats, and heat pumps is just not an option. Is Octopus looking at that kind of typology at all?
Yes, we can't do zero bills yet, but we are looking at how we can. That is an ambition. We're also looking for other sort of weird, I'm going to call them dumb technologies, like things for windows and water widgets and all that other stuff that can basically bring the energy consumption of a property down in order to try and get to that ambition.
And I suppose just to clarify that, because I'm kind of conscious of how many heat pump experts and other district heating experts might be in the room. Yes, heat pumps are possible, just maybe not in the way that Emma has.
Not in the zero bills, not in the zero bills context.
Way, but yes, they cannot do zero. In case anybody's really upset about that. But yeah, I think that is absolutely true. There's some questions as taking another privileged channel of comms from some of our own best colleagues as well, which I might ask one. You're all here because you're actively disrupting markets or situations or your environments that you're in. What message do you share for those who might positively disrupt your approaches in the future?
Bring it on, it's great.
That's exactly my phrase, bring it on. Yeah, come on.
I love it. To be a disruptor is a good thing, but I mean, it's not disruption just to be disruptive like in school, it's for a purpose. So, so again, we've not got all the solutions, we're trying things, and I think being challenged is part of the process, so yeah.
Change doesn't happen once.
No.
It's process.
Actually, I'm glad you said that change doesn't happen once, because when you were talking about your project, the Phoenix, of course, BedZ was in my mind. and how there must be so many lessons learned. I actually think there was an article about it more recently in Pacifies Plus magazine, which was really interesting to see that come through.
We worked, I and my colleagues worked with Bill Dunster even before he built BedSet. So it's this idea of, there's always nothing new under the sun. When people ask me what's new or different about the Phoenix, I'm like, nothing. It's just, it's just a jigsaw of good and better that's already out there put together in new ways. And I think that, the thing that you were saying earlier about, we do have this challenge of, it is like patting your head and rubbing your tummy at the same time, because you've got to, what we've been talking about today is the power of demonstration, the power of doing, the power of experience. And you're also trying to kind of look and learn from what's been done before, because, we really shouldn't be reinventing wheels right now. If something's been learnt out there, let's take that learning. And we're also, with our other hand, trying to create narratives and tell the story and share. So, I think coming back to that kind of question earlier about burnout and recognizing your limitations, we do need to be jugglers amidst all this, but also setting ourselves up to, with each other, almost like, I think of it as a village. And the fact that, we come together and we kind of learn with and from each other, and then we sort of have a river of ideas that comes through and flows and then goes out, and too many metaphors there, but that's the kind of dynamic we're sitting with. But yeah, if someone, or organisation comes in and has better ideas and disrupts the piece of the village or the river that we're building on, well, great, that's what we need.
I was thinking as well, about the case in point that BedSet is how old now?
It's about 20 years, I think.
And what you're doing, and then the example of what you're doing and your reflection of how, I wouldn't know about that if we were here. Are we very good at spreading the good news from the work that we're doing? Because it might be quite frustrating for people to hear, wait, what? Wait, there was an example of this 20 years ago, and why does this sound like a shiny new idea? And how can we do better disseminating? And I mean, I think we've covered the question around convincing people who are not on side, because you're creating a better narrative to invite them in, so you don't have to do all the work of convincing, right? But are we very good at the storytelling and the getting people on side? I don't know, Emma, if you...
I think we're not very good.
Yeah.
I think we're good in the moment, but we don't even have an intranet, right? So everything is from our website. Nearly all my slides are screenshots from the website. So you can find it if you're looking for it, but it's not in one place. And certainly for our village project, there isn't a website. The county council sort of took it on. My worst attribute is the thrill is in the chase for me, and therefore probably not shouting about it thereafter. I'm thinking, what else should I be doing?
Funbi, you looked like you were...
No, I was just going to say we need to be better at marketing ourselves, and this kind of goes back to knowing your audience and knowing and understanding people's motivations. So we're all here because we're quite passionate about the topic, but we'll go into those situations where you've got difficult people that you need to kind of encourage or inspire. And I'm probably similar to you, I'm quite interested in actually getting on with things. So not necessarily the best in terms of marketing it, although this year I've had to do that because that became the focus. But yeah, I think as a community, we need to learn to stand proud, even when met with negativity. And that's something that is an active journey as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that question at the top for Emma about how do you overcome the negative press when you're faced with that, it kind of sounded like you went, meh. There it is, but we can't focus.
It was really hard. I take it very much to heart. I was happy with the village project. I have had it a couple of times in the work context. So all I can say is I think you need to all go online on the Daily Mail and have some more thumbs up for the people doing the right things. And also the Daily Telegraph online as well. That was also a nasty place to be. So yeah, I think we've just got to back each other, support each other. And when we do something great, elevate it up.
I think we talk a lot about being pioneers, about being change makers, activists. Actually, probably one of the key parts of the job is to actually create new norms. It's great to be exciting and pioneering and hot news and the latest story, actually we want this stuff to be boring.
Yeah.
So when we talk about mainstreaming, actually, it might feel slower, that point of, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And it might feel like it's a bit of a distraction to tell the story as you go along. It might feel it's a bit of a distraction to constantly be in that kind of translator role, where you're kind of having to put it into other people's headspaces. But if we do that, then they become the advocates. They become the voice. And what might be pioneering today, let's hope, we don't need another 20 years between a BedZ and a Phoenix and whatever comes next, because we can be raising that playing field, because there's always more pioneering work to be done.
Yeah. We've got a minute, so I think the nicest way to use that would be to just get some closing reflections from each of our panelists. Which is,
They're all looking at you, Emma.
I hadn't had a minute to reflect yet. Just give me a minute to reflect. Emma?
I really think if you've got a gem of an idea, go find other people to help you to germinate the idea and take it forwards. It's not a stupid idea. I mean, probably 1 in 100 of my ideas is good, right? I'd also say a fairly...
If 1 in 100 is good, right?
Yeah,
You're telling us, somebody do the maths. How many ideas has she had?
I give credit to my unsympathetic husband as well. He basically goes, well, what did you expect? And sometimes a little bit of the cold truth does help, because it stops you from wallowing from too long in getting upset about stuff, and then you can regroup and think, okay, right, I just need to change direction. So I think maybe not wallowing, maybe celebrating a bit more, not wallowing so much, and if you feel it's right, believe that others will follow you once you've got something to show them.
Great. Joanna?
Similar, I think. It's, don't wait until you've got all the answers, because until you try, you won't know. And the act of trying and doing and sharing creates momentum in a way that sitting and trying to work it out before you start never will.
Yeah, I think, again, is that idea of, if you've got an idea, just talk about it, because if you don't actually vocalize it in whatever way, getting that idea out of your head and into other people's heads, it's never going to happen. And allowing yourself to fail, 100 ideas and only one works, but that's one good idea that works. And yeah, I just wanted to say, thank you to everyone who turned up here. You are the people who will go out and do that. So you've already done something. And yeah, just thanking the audience is what I wanted to add.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, thanks to our speakers. We'll give them a round of applause.